Hello, my name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as LeDev, and I'm here to continue on my review of the currently reviewed cards from the Boomsday expansion. Before we start though, one question I do want to ask the audience is, I do stream from time to time, and I'm wondering if people want me to potentially stream the launch day of the Boomsday project and just, opening the packs and just doing my usual brewing deck tech shenanigans. If you're interested in that, I'll try to get that arranged. The only catch is my internet here is a little finicky, so I'll probably have to do some test streams to try to make sure the internet can work. But overall, I do want to try to do that if people are interested. Other than that, I'll probably just do deck tech videos because there's a lot of experimentation with this new set. Excuse me for a minute. There we go. Now, the first card we're going to start off with is honestly one of the most insane epics that we have in expansion in quite a while. It's the free mana free for Augmented Elec, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a beast, but we're not here because it's a beast, even though that it will be relevant pretty soon. We're here because of its ability. Whenever you shuffle a card into a deck, shuffle in a extra copy. Guys, the brewing brain when I first seen this card just went insane. I mean, I think the first thing that people think of right off the bat when they see this card, it's like, oh, so with Feldari Strider I can get more spooters, right? Yes, but then when you start looking and seeing how many cards we have that have the ability to shuffle cards into your deck, this card becomes absurd. I mean, we have Feldar Strider, is the obvious one. We have the new Academic Espionage. We have the Lab Recruiter, which makes... I think this card is going to see play in Rogue, no sweat about that, especially since they're going to be having a lot of manipulation of their deck with their current cards they've been revealed. I mean, heck, it even makes Pogo Jumper debatably playable because of this card. But that's not all. There's also cards in Hunter, like Dire Frenzy. Oh, hey, this is a beast. You can shuffle this in. And, oh, hey, you're going to shuffle in, rather than 3 copies, 6 copies. And they're going to be 6/7, so you can keep it relevant and such. I mean, even in Hunter, there's Dead Man's Hand, which then it's like... There's some people that make the argument that in Dead Man's Hand it doesn't seem that intuitive because people want to kind of restrict their card control options. And in the controlled Dead Man's Hand deck, I can actually see that. But I think if you make a value-based Dead Man's Hand deck, I think Augmented Elec will be perfect in that. Also in Mage, the obvious one is Deck of Wonders, so if you want to shuffle 10 random scrolls in and then just see random magic and pretty much play the slot machine of the random number generator Jesus known as Hearthstone at times. But also there is, I mean, even if you're not in a class that has exclusive cards that shuffle cards in your deck, we still have neutral options, like with the Baleful Banker that came out from the Witchwood. Oh, hey, you want to make some shenanigan deck in, say, Warlock that might manipulate with this card? Hey, get a value-based minion, Baleful Banker, this, there you go. I mean, the opportunities to brew around this card is absurd, and it's probably one of my favorite neutral cards just came out of this set, unless they reveal something else. At the current moment of this recording, this is my favorite neutral card they revealed in the set. It's just, the amount of brewing shenanigans you can do around this card is absurd. Now, if there is a catch, and there is technically a teeny little catch, it is one of those where I think the stats are good on it, but it is one of those once people figure out what your deck is, it's going to be one of those hard cards to play on turn 3. Like, you'll probably want to play this on turn 8 or turn 9, because I think the minute you play this, even with the decent stats, we're in a meta where people are like, oh, I see what you're doing, remove. So I think you want to be very cautious when using this card. Overall, though, I love this card. This card is just, if you asking me one of the first cards you should probably craft for this expansion, do craft this card. It is ridiculously absurd. You're going to have a blast. Next on the list of the neutral cards that have been revealed so far is the Mechanical Whelp. A 6 mana 2/2, with a Death Rattle, summon a 7/7 Mechanical Dragon. I think this card is a lot more playable than it looks right off the bat. I mean, yeah, the fact that you're spending 6 mana for a 2/2... Ooh, yeah, that feels bad. But when you think about it in the way that you're just spending 6 mana for an egg that summons a 7/7, it doesn't become as bad. Now, the only catch-22 with this card is I think it's going to be prone to a lot of silence hate. So I think you're going to have to put this in a very proactive Death Rattle deck, which there are definitely options in Priest and even options with some neutral legendary. The one turtle that makes you, when you play your Death Rattle minions, it becomes active and such. Then I think this card is a lot more playable than people give it credit for. Plus, it might even see some fringe play in Death Rattle Hunter 2, especially since they're getting some nice little tools to activate this card. It's also actually really good in Warrior as well, especially with the new legendary hero, Dr. Boom. But we'll get to that when we get to that. I mean, the factor is, if you do that, one of the abilities I'll spoil is Warrior's going to have the ability, thanks to the hero, to have all their mechs have Rush. And when you look at this as a, deal 9 Rush damage to help control the board, yeah, that's actually pretty tempting. Overall, I think this is actually a fine card. It's definitely going to see a lot of arena play. It's a card that, if you just looked at the stats alone, you think, but I think it's one of those cards that's a lot more playable if you just look at it as a higher cost egg. And a 7/7 Mechanical Dragon is nothing to sneeze at. Another neutral card that they revealed is the Missile Launcher, a 6 mana 4/4 mech with Magnetic. So you can attach this to any mech, and it gives it the ability, other than the stat boost, that at the end of your turn, deal 1 damage to all other characters. I think this card's just fine. It's one of those where it'll be interesting because there are roundabout ways to do shenanigans with this card. Like the fact that we have ways to give mechs lifesteal thanks to some magnetic cards, like the legendary Zinanats and such. So we can, or Ziliats, sorry, mispronunciation there. So the factor that you can deal 1 damage and then gain that much life to every enemy is, or to all other characters and then gain that much life, it kind of works as a mech variation of Barrageddon. But I think the most hilarious thing, and it is a very roundabout way, I don't think you can do this, but if someone does, well, I'll give them the kudos of the brewing shenanigans. But here's this. There's this one card that came out from the Witchwood expansion, which is the Anomaly. Like, it's the one where it's the 3 mana 3/4 that's all creature types, including Murloc, Mech, Beast, Dragon, Demon, etc., etc., etc. Nightmare Anomaly, that's what it is, or I think that's what it is. A Nightmare Anomagation. I pretty much probably going to have to edit the text in here to remember what the name was, but play that minion, then attach the Missile Launcher onto it. You can't do this all in one turn. And then play the one minion from Journey to Ungala, which allows you to adapt your Murlocs, the Gentle Megasaurus, I think it is. Hope you get Poisonous, and then have a Nightmare Anomaly that actually deals 1 damage to everything, and it's poisonous, so it constantly destroys the board. I think that is really Magical Christmas Land, but that would be freaking hilarious. Also, it goes without saying, if there is a way to give mechs poisonous besides that roundabout way, yeah, this card might actually see some play because of that. If there is a very easy way to give it poisonous. Because the only way I could think that's easier other than that Magical Christmas Land I was talking about is, I guess in theory on turn 8 or 9, you could just play this card by itself and then the Frozen Throne card that when it combos with a card, you can give a friendly minion poisonous. That is probably the most easiest way to actually get away with this. But the fact that you can modify this card a little bit and the magnetic keyword, I think this card is a lot more playable than it first seems at first. And plus, it is kind of hilarious. Anyway, let's get to the next card. Next up is the Replicating Menace, a 4-mana free run that has Magnetic, and it has a Death Rattle to summon 3 1/1 Microbots. Now, the 1/1 Microbots are just 1/1 mechs with no extra text on them. That's just it. Overall, this is an interesting card. I mean, it is kind of in a way, as we kind of were saying, how the War Gear is kind of like how you give King's Blessing to everyone. This is kind of a variation of the King's Blessing enchantment, except you're prolonging the free stats with the Death Rattle. I think this is a card that... this one's an interesting one. I think this card will see play in Warrior Mech. No sweat about that in Mech Warrior. Especially when the fact that they have the opportunity to get the Mech's Rush. Because then, that to them, this spell then becomes, in a roundabout way, kind of like a Fireball that only affects minions. And that's actually really powerful. Besides that, this also sees them play in Hunter, since they have ways to manipulate Death Rattles of mechs and such. I can see that. Paladin, maybe. And with other classes, it's really depending if they want this really roundabout way of having, quote-unquote, a Blessings of King that's kind of delayed with some of the... that gives a big attack boost, but not really a great toughness boost. One other potential this might combo with that is actually kind of amusing is in some Death Rattle decks with Dollmaster Dorian. That can actually be kind of hilarious to draw your card and then draw this, and then it's just you get the doll copy on the field, which then when it dies you get free mana ones. Also, the other legendary one that makes it where you activate your Death Rattles when it's played, that's also something to consider. Really, I think the value of this card is really going to be dependent on if those 1/1 mechs is valuable to what your game plan is. Which, I think the one thing that comes right off the bat to make this kind of valuable is, oh hey, it's sticky mechs. And sticky mechs means stuff that I can attach magnetic stuff to. And when you look at it that way, this card's not actually that bad. I mean, I think it's one of those that I don't think it will see play at first, other than in the Mech Warrior deck, because, well, Fireball for mechs on minions. Enough said on that one. But I do think it's going to see some more fringe play, and just people are going to have shenanigans. Will this see competitive play? Maybe. It really depends on the value of mech decks against the current meta and such. Overall, though, nice card, but it's one that I think might break apart pretty easily. Huh? See what I did there? Let's get to the next card. And now that we got done with the neutral cards that have been revealed so far, I'm going to actually start out with the Warrior cards, because the Warrior cards are actually kind of a lot fun from this expansion. Warrior is kind of getting an upgrade. The first card we're going to talk about is the Beryllium Nullifier. I think it's how you pronounce that. It's a 7-mana 3/8. It's a mech, it's magnetic, and it can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. Overall, there's a lot of people that are kind of not liking this card a lot because they figure the stats are just a little bit eh. They're like, it's a 7-mana 3/8. There's a lot more better stuff you'd be playing on turn 7. And while there's an element of truth to that, and I think there's more people that are just like, well, I think you're mostly wanting to take advantage of the magnetic. However, with the cards currently revealed in Warrior and such, I think this card is a lot better than people give it at glance. Because in the history of Hearthstone, cards with this ability that it can't be targeted by spells or hero powers are usually cards that either have high attackness but low toughness. And they are easily tradable and such. This is actually one of the first ones that we have. Not the very first. I mean, there is Tarantus, and there is one card from the Whispers of the Old Guard that had high toughness and had pretty much the factor that it can't be targeted. Though, I think that card didn't see much play due to the factor that it was a very heavy aggro-based meta in the Whisper of the Old God meta, if I recall correctly. But I think this card is main benefit that it's really hard to remove. Like, you have to have some very efficient trading, or poisonous, or silence and such, to actually remove this card. Which I think makes it actually a good base to actually help with your magnetic. You know, so you need a sticky minion that stays on the board so you can attach a magnetic attachment to it. Here you go, Billion Nullifier. And also, the magnetic is a +2, so if you already have a mech on the field, hey, give it the stat boost, and now it can't be targeted. Nice. Overall, I think this card is a lot more playable than people give it granted. I think you, in Mech Warrior, this card will probably see some fringe play. I think it's way too good than people are giving it credit. Next on the list is another really good card for Warrior if they're going into the Mech Warrior strategy. It might even just be a good card in general. It's the 1-mana 1/3 Eternium Rover. It's a 1/3 mech that has the ability that whenever this minion takes damage, gain 2 armor. This is a really, really good 1-drop for mechs. And this is a really good 1-drop for warriors. I mean, a lot of people in this current meta do play 1-mana 1/3s because the stats are decent enough against the meta. And the fact that this has the ability that it gains armor when it gets dealt damage is really good. And the factor that it's a mech, which means you can magnetize stuff on it and keep it on the board a lot longer. Which then, when it gets dealt more damage, you gain more armor and such. I mean, this is a really might be a really early game threat that people might try to remove as soon as possible. Yeah, it's that good. Plus, also, the factor that there's a lot of Mech Warrior synergies going out for Warrior and such. Yeah, this card is just... It's really hard to talk about because it's kind of one of those cards that... Yeah, it's good. It's a 1-mana 1/3. You gain armor. It works with armor synergies. It's going to work with mech synergies. I think it will even see play even in non-mech decks, even in Control Warrior, because just that ability to gain armor when it gets damage is really, really good. Overall, great card for Warrior. We really needed a good 1-drop, and this is a perfect 1-drop. Next tool that Warriors got on their arsenal is a new weapon, a 5-mana 1/3 Super Collider that has the ability... Now, at first you're like, wait, why are we spending 5 mana for a 1/3? Well, it's because of its ability, which is, after you attack a minion, force it to attack one of its neighbors. So, the best case mentality scenario that they actually showed off in the video that showed off this card is, oh hey, there's 2 mountain giants. You attack one of the mountain giants giant attacks the other mountain giant, they both die, yippee-yay, awesome. Now, I think this card is actually still really good, because Serenite Chain Cane is a really popular card in the meta, and I think that's good for board states like that. However, I do think this is a card that is going to be a case of, I think the first 2 weeks of the meta, when this gets introduced, it's going to see a lot of play, and then I think it's going to be reduced a little bit. It really is dependent on how the meta changes, but this is a card that once people realize that it's a tool that Warriors got, and if it's popular enough that Warriors use it, it's going to be probably either it's going to be A, weapon hated out a lot, or B, kind of like with Crushing Walls and Hunter, people are going to make sure to position their board state relevant enough that they're going to try to negate a total negative effect when somebody attacks one of their minions using this weapon. Overall, though, I think it's a versatile tool. It's also kind of just very nice because it also has other synergies, like if somebody accidentally puts a poisonous minion on the field and you find a way to attack the poisonous minion, then it's easily removed, hopefully a big minion in Fury. Really, it's depending on how the meta changes with its board state, but it's a very versatile tool for Warrior for control. And seeing now that they have more ways to gain armor, especially with the new 1-drop and such, yeah, I think this is going to see some fringe play. Next off is actually the legendary spell that Warrior's getting, which is the 9-mana The Boom Ship, which it's a legendary spell, which does the following. Summon 3 random minions from your hand and give them rush. Yeah, this spell is pretty powerful, especially in the right deck archetypes like very value-based Warrior decks. They're probably looking at this card. Also, Control Warrior will probably look at this card a lot. Because there's just some silly shenanigans you can do by just having summoning minions and giving them rush. Like, for example, say, oh, giving... Let me think of the best case mentality here. Ysera Rush is pretty hilarious. And then just getting the card at the end. The Lich King. Even just some big stat minions like ogres and such. Just being able to give them rush and maybe have an effect with the spell damage is something considering. Also, like Sleeping Dragon and such. I mean, the list can go on of very high value late game minions. I mean, heck, even with giants in general, if you just get a giant out of this and then just give it rush and such. Plus, also, if we ever get a 1-mana magnetic minion, maybe this might synergize with if you have some high value late game mechs, but I'm just going to not make that a presumption just yet, because we haven't seen that yet. But still, I think the broken combo that most people are talking about is the combo with Hellscream and the 2 charging dinosaurs, and then just have a pain buff spell, which then gives you about 24 to 26 damage, if I remember the math correct, combo, which, yeah, that's a pretty absurd combo if you can get away with it. Overall, though, this meta might be, if the meta is as slow as it is currently post the nerf of the Witchwood meta, then I think this card will actually see some play, because the value-based warrior decks, or either control warrior decks, because the payoff you can get for getting free minions with rush and also just charge minions in general, yeah, I think this is a fun card that will probably see some play. Plus, the art is kind of hilarious. And the last warrior card they reveal, and it's the highlight card of the set, it's the legendary, it's the main star of the show, Dr. Boom, Mad Genius. It's a 7-mana hero card, which then gives you 7 armor, so 7 mana, 7/7. Haha, I see what you did there. And then the battle cry is, for the rest of the game, your mechs have rush. And then the hero power changes into, what happens is, it's actually a random hero power. So what it works is, it actually changes between 5 different hero powers every time you activate it, so it swaps. So there's one where the hero power is gain 7 armor. That's really good. Another one is discover a mech. That's really good. Another one is just pretty much spawn free microbots, which if we talked about the previous neutral card, they're just free little 1/1 mana mechs. Another one is deal free damage. That's really good. And the last one, if I remember correct, is deal 1 damage to all enemy minions, but it could also be enemy characters. I need to check with. I'll probably show a little card here that shows all the hero powers once we talk about this. So, is this a good card? Yeah, this is a really, really good card. I mean, the Battlecry itself is probably the strongest part of this card. There's a lot of value-based mechs that we've been seeing in this expansion, and there's just a ton of really good mechs. And giving them rush can help Warrior have something that they've been having struggle with, which is board control presence. Like, yeah, we have the board wipes, we have the kill spells and all that, but keeping a constant board presence is something that mechs had really hard, like trading in and such. Like, their minions are sometimes tricky to trade in because they're sometimes value-based. However, with mechs, that's actually a totally different story. Like, if you tell me that every mech that we're getting in this game has rush after this hero card, I mean, there's endless possibilities. Like, the Mechanical Whelp. Hey, you play it, sure, it's a 2/2, swing in for 2 at an enemy minion. Oh, then now it becomes a 7/7. Now you can swing at another minion and such. And then, I mean, this card just gets better and better with how many mechs we have currently in the meta. Plus, Nightmare Amalgam, if you want to actually do that. And also with Magnetic and such. And the hero powers, while there is the catch-22 that it's going to be varied, and it's hard because you can't get the hero power you probably just want on certain board states, all the hero powers in general are just decent. I mean, gaining 7 armor is obviously the best one in Warrior, but all the other ones are just fine and actually assist with the overall what the hero does. It's random, which, as we know with Dr. Boom, with his previous card, it's random. So, nice flavor. Yeah, this card's going to see a lot of play, and I cannot wait to make the Mech Warrior deck, because let's be frank, people just want to make a warrior mech deck just so they can make the video game pun title for their deck design, if we're being quite frankly honest. But this card will help out a lot. Plus, hey, it's also in a mech suit, so more puns abound. Now we're going from warrior to actually priest cards, and one of the priest cards they reviewed is the free mana Omega Medic. It's a free mana free 4, but adds a battle cry that with the Omega sub-mechanic that if you have 10 mana crystals, restore 10 health to your hero. Overall, this card's just really good. Priests have been looking for a free mana free 4 for a long time. Like, there are Dragon Priest decks that will play the Nightman Amalgam just because the free mana free 4, plus the fact that it is a dragon, which helps synergize with other dragon synergy cards. Overall, just playing this on turn 3 is fine, but the factor that if you know you're going against an aggro-based deck, that you can use this as a recover tool to restore 10 health to your hero, that's really good. I mean, I think the only catch to it is that, on one hand, even with the biggest health buff, playing this around turn 10 might seem a little mute, even with the health restore, because, well, free mana free 4. But I'll make the argument that we do have enough buff spells in Priest that if you need to, absolutely, you can probably buff this minion up when you play it. But still, mostly, let's be frank, you're either playing this on turn 3 to get the free 4 out there to help you with board presence, or you're playing this for health gain, and it's just a perfect minion on both fronts. So overall, great minion for Priests. They actually needed this a while since we all can use a little anti-kill bot in our lives. Speaking of which, I really hope they reprint some variation of anti-kill bot or some mech that heals in this set, because that would actually be a nice touch. But still, great card for Priest to help them with healing. Next up, a card that got revealed for Priest is the 5 mana spell, Power Word, Replicate. And it's a buff spell. Since you always see the Power Word, when they ever use Power Word, that usually means it's a buff spell for a minion. So, the buff spell this time is actually choose a friendly minion, summon a 5/5 copy of it. Huh. So, obviously, people are making the obvious perception of, oh, this is Faceless Manipulator, the spell. Even though they're seen beginning the aspect that it's just a 5/5 copy, it's not an exact copy of the minion. Though, this card, even when it's a 5/5, is actually not bad. I mean, combo priest decks are probably looking at this. The obvious one is probably Malgo-based decks that are burn spell centric. You can also do some silly shenanigans with this with Lila, Lila the Sun. You know, the one that when you cast a spell, you add a random priest spell to your hand. And you can even use this on stuff like the 2 mana 2/3 that makes your spells reduced to down 1, and there's a lot of potential pre-synergy cards you can have. I can even see this potentially seen play in dragon-based decks that are more value-centric, like with Ysera and such, because getting a second copy of Ysera, not bad. Also, this synergizes with the new Priest Legendary that they're getting, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Overall, though, it's one of those, I think this is mostly going to see either play in value-based minion decks like Death Rattle Priest and such, or combo-based Priest decks. But overall, I think it's not a bad card. It's definitely yet to be careful, but wait a minute. There is actually one thing about this card that actually is really good. The fact that it's a 5 mana 5/5 copy does actually make it where you can actually, let's say you're playing Death Rattle Hunter, you play Arthas on turn 4, for some reason the opponent doesn't trade with it because they don't want you to get the Death Knight card. You play this on Arthas, you get a 5/5 mana Arthas, which is actually for 5 mana, not bad. It helps you with board trades and such, so you can actually use this on lower value-based minions and still get decent stats to help with efficient trading and such. Yeah, actually now coming to think of it, this card is actually a lot better, actually now when thinking of that. Yeah, this card will probably see play. It's a really good card. Now, the cost does make it a little bit debatable, but with how much cost reduction in spells that priests have in their current meta toolbox, yeah, this will see play. Next up, card that got revealed for priests, and it is a doozy of a card. It's the Reckless Experimenter, a 5 mana 4/6, good stats, but its ability is what matters on this one, which is Death Rattle minions you play cost 3 less. That's really good. The catch, though, is but they die at the end of your turn. So, this card seems a little bit weird at first, because it's like, wait, why would I want to play minions for cheap if they're going to die? So, obviously, you don't want to play this on a mid-range priest deck where you're trying to get board presence. Yeah, this is a complete novel for those type of decks. However, there's enough of value-based death rattles that are in the meta and upcoming from the meta that I think this card will see a lot of fun experimentation play. Like, the one example that people are calling off right off the bat, on turn 5, you play this, the opponent has an intimidating minion, Voodoo Doll is free now, so you cast it for free, you target the minion, then it dies, and then, oh hey, the Death Rattle to Voodoo Doll destroys the other minion, there you go. Plus also it actually kind of works as, there's a ton of really good cheap Death Rattle minions that I think people will not mind to play with this card to just help cycle through their deck faster. Like there's Loot Hoarder, there's even a new Priest Death Rattle card that we'll get to once we get to it. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can use this card to help cycle through your deck a lot faster, which in a Death Rattle Priest deck might actually be really efficient. I think this is a card that's definitely going to be a brew me around card, but I can't wait to play with this and just test it out, because the shenanigans you can get away with this card is actually pretty silly once you think of all the possibilities. Speaking of the Death Rattle minions, next up is Dead Rena, a 2-mana 2/1 mech that has Death Rattle. Draw a Death Rattle minion from your deck. So, obviously with the previous card, it synergizes with this card very well. Plus, just playing a 2-mana 2/1 is decent with the stats, and the factor that since Quest Priest is a thing, and they really want their Death Rattle minions, the fact that you can play this, know you're going to exclusively draw a Death Rattle minion, which you can hopefully play on your turn for turn 3 or such. I mean, there is the variance, since Death Rattle Priest does play a variety of Death Rattle minions, so you might not draw into the one you can play next turn, but if it's a value-based minion that you don't mind playing later game, that might just be fine. I mean, this is literally just a 2-mana 2/1 cycle itself for a value-based minion that you're probably going to be using in your deck, especially if your archetype's around the whole Death Rattle shenanigans. I mean, plus it's also a mech, so it does synergize with Magnetize, though it has been said in blog posts that Magnetize minions and that sub-mechanic is mostly going to be focused on Paladin, Warrior, and Hunter, so that might be mute, but there are neutral mechs with Magnetize, so it's something to keep in mind. Overall, though, this one's pretty self-explanatory. It's a 2-mana 2/1 cycle card. It might have some potential mech synergies. Drawing a Death Rattle minion is nice. Cards that allow you to draw specific cards from your deck is nothing ever to sneeze at. It'll see play, especially in Quest Priest, and it might even just see play in some value-based Priest decks overall. Next up is the legendary scientist for the Priest class, which is Zelek, Master Cloner. It's a 6-mana 5/5 that has a Death Rattle. If you cast any spells on this minion, resummon it. Okay, this is a interesting card. I mean, priests do have a lot of buff spells, so the fact that you can recur this, it does make this a slightly better Karen in some instances. Plus, we do have spells to allow you to copy this, like the Epic Priest spell and such, that makes another copy of this, so then it targets it, so when this dies, it will make the other copy. It is nice in the sense that it can be, as long as you have buff spells in your deck, it's a very sticky minion, so it might be prone to actually being able to buff it and such. However, I'm kind of 50-50 on this card, because a majority of buff minion decks in Priest, other than using Power Word of Shield for cycling, they mostly like to be burst decks. They like to do Divine Spirit, Inner Fire, burst in for a lot of damage. And this card kinda doesn't encourage that. Or at least from what it seems at first scenes, because it's like, oh, you put a Divine Spirit on this, and then it gets removed, and then it's like, okay, at least I get a 5/5 back. That's nice, but then I waste my buff spell. It's It's one of those the very specific qualifications of having to make sure you apply buffs to this with your buff spells, which are very valuable in priests. It's weird. Now, there is an argument that this could potentially see synergy with other cards, like in the Witchward, there's the one where make a copy of a minion, but the minion has 1 health. Yeah, that might be it. Only way I can see this card seeing play is, I mean, in a weird way, you could make an argument for this in Death Rattle Priest, because you are, quote-unquote, as long as you buff it up and such, get consistent Death Rattle minions on the field summoned by the Death Rattle, which then helps you get Porong into your quest. Yet again, there's not many Death Rattle Priest decks I know that play buff spells, so maybe there's an off variation of this deck. Yeah, this is a weird card. This is a card where I think I need first to see its application and test it out before I can make a final opinion on it. I'm on, like, if I was on my usual card review scale, like what I do for a core set review for Magic the Gathering or such, or like what I'll probably do when I do the inevitable big card review, seeing all the set together, this to me is still a maybe card. I don't know if it's going to see play. It does have some good applications. It's interesting. But it's very situational, and sometimes very situational cards are very hard to play in card games. Sometimes they're not, but sometimes they are, and I think Zarek Master Cloner, while cool design, is going to have some trouble being played in the meta. Now, while the legendary minion was very debatable, the legendary spell that Priest got is amazing. It's the 9-mana Zeret's Cloning Garly, and it has the spell effect of summoning a 1/1 copy of each minion in your deck. Okay, before we go into like best case mentality, remember the one thing about this card, you can only have a total of 7 minions on your deck. 7 minions on the battlefield. So, presuming you have an empty field and you play this, it's going to summon 7 random copies of 7 random minions in your deck. At least if I'm reading this card right. So, is that good? Yeah, that could be really, really good. Now, the first application I think of right off the bat is this is really good in a value-based minion deck, like Death Rattle Priest, or like maybe any priest that has value-based minions, like the Lich King, Ysera, etc., even Cairn, or any valuable Death Rattles and such. Just summoning a bunch of 1/1 of those, yeah, it's prone to removal, but let's be frank, you're not doing it because of the stats, you're doing it because you're getting the value base of either the card generation or the Death Rattle effects that you get from those minions. I mean, heck, being able to summon a 1/1 Mechanical Whelp and then getting a 7-mana minion when it dies, I mean, the applications of this card is endless. Plus, the one that most people are calling off right at the bat, yes, this card could potentially see play in combo decks, well, like Malygos and all that. I don't think that's that practical, though, because, well, I mean, if it's one of those ways they can get off the spell with Malygos by the time they play the spell and not wait till next turn, sure, maybe we'll see play in combo decks. And the one best case mentality that people are thinking of right off the bat is, oh, get Malygos, get the 2 freeze that reduce your spells by 1, get some other spell buff minions, and then, pretty much since now your spells cost 2 less, then do Mind Blast for a ton of damage. And yeah, that's possible. However, I don't think this is a card you want to rely on. If you do go combo-centric, you want to rely on more than 4 minions to go off with the combo. Because remember, these are minions in your deck. In an average game of Hearthstone, you're going to be drawing cards. You probably will be drawing those cards. And it's going to feel really bad if you play the Malygos combo deck and then you're like, dun dun dun! Oh, wait, I drew my Malygos. I was hoping to Cloning Garly it. Shucks. Still, it is potential in combo decks, don't get me wrong. And the factor that you can actually get multiple copies of this thanks to the Shadow Word, the Shadow spell that allows you to discover spells in your deck and get a copy in your hand. Yeah, think, personally, this is going to see more application in value-based priest spells and even in Death Rattle priests. I think people will try to do the Maui Ghost combo deck with this, but I will warn them. It's kind of like Spiteful Summoner in the sense that once you draw in Spiteful Druid, when you draw your ultimate infestations before you draw your Spiteful Summoners, yeah, you're going to feel bad when that happens, right? I think that's going to be the same thing if people play combo decks with this card. Still, I think it's a really good legendary spell, and that effect in itself, it's just... There's just so many silly things you can do. I can't wait to try this card out. And overall, I'll probably end this part of the card review spoil schedule here. Next up, I think I'm going to talk about the Mage and Shaman cards that get revealed so far, plus any other cards I missed. And then, after that, I'll try to do one more video where I talk about the Warlock cards that get revealed, and... Let's see, what classes have I not talked about yet? Warlock, Paladin, and pretty much any other classes that I'm not thinking of right off the bat. And then I'll probably do one more video where maybe it's going to be after the big reveal on August 1st, where I'll catch up with all the cards that I missed. And then I might, if people want to, try to go through a full card review like I do with the core sets and such, and then just give my score of the cards. Overall, though, I hope you have a lovely day, and thank you for your time. See you later. Bye-doo.